Hi guys, I'm Brandy. This is Hound Dog Hollow, and today I'm going to be reviewing What is Remembered Lives. Every Wednesday I am reviewing a book, so please check that out. I know that there's definitely a niche for reviews of metaphysical and witchy books. So I'm trying to block my books by topic. So I've already done all of my astrology books, and next I had been working through all of my ancestor veneration books. This is the last of those books, so we're going to be moving on to a new topic starting next week. Next week I think we're going to be looking, starting to sift through books that are meant to like kind of lay out different ideas for how you can live a life more pagan or spiritual throughout the year. We'll be going through topics like that. But anyways, back to this book. So, What is Remembered Lives? Let me just start with the first good things. This is a beautiful book. I was very, very excited. I like the way that it looks. It looks very timeless. It looks very beautiful. I am going to come straight out and say this was not my favorite book This is not my favorite book in general, but also this book did not fit very well into my ancestral veneration library. It probably is not going to stay with me. It's probably going to be put up on my website for resale, because this isn't a book that really dives into ancestral veneration in the way that my other books had. So while each of my ancestral veneration books spanned anywhere from beginner 101 ancestral veneration straight through intermediate, maybe some of them a little more advanced, this one I would say is a primer before 101. This is for people who are spiritually curious, people who are curious about connecting with any kind of non-physical beings. So she covers deities, and frankly, the large portion of this book covers deities, specific, not deities in general, but specific deities that she felt called to speak about in this book. And then there's 3 very short, not very in-depth chapters about ancestral veneration. And frankly, after reading all of those excellent books on ancestral veneration, they did leave quite a bit to be desired. But I have to go back, take a step back and say, had I read this book first, it would have been far more satisfactory. But having gone through so many very, very good, very in-depth ancestral veneration books, and thinking that this book would have similar information but with the author's point of view, I was blindsided by how this book is not what I thought it was. And so that's not anything that the author does. Obviously, the author is taking, what has called to her spiritually. She's creating this work and putting it out into the world, and I will never knock anybody for that. It takes a lot of bravery to create something, and I think for many people, this book would be absolutely just wonderful, just very, very good, and definitely an excellent launching point if you've been curious about this topic, about connecting with deities, about connecting with ancestors, about connecting with the Fae, or she lumps the Fae with land spirits, which I heavily disagree with. But this is a nice starting point to kind of just dive into this. I'm going to go through like I do for each book. And just talk about what is going on. So the foreword is by Ged Parma, and the author says why this book, and she just goes through a little bit about what it is that inspired her. How to develop relationships with the unseen. It started out pretty good. So realm travel, invitations, creating solid intentions, research, making space, being patient. All of this is very good advice. This was a nice intro. So one of the things that that has heavily influenced this author is the the book and perhaps TV series inspired by Neil Gaiman's American Gods, this book is heavily influenced by that. And the concept of what is remembered live is this author's point of view that gods and deities and ancestors and land spirits and the Fae cannot exist without us thinking about them, which I do not agree with. Well, ancestors I do, but I don't agree with even them, because if you look at any of the other ancestral work that I have reviewed, there is, of course, the ancestors that you remembered, but at any given point, there's a vast amount of lineage that we don't remember at all, that surpasses human memory for every human being. So you may be able to trace back, like my husband, his mother is really into genealogy, and she can trace back to 1200, the 12th century, right? I obviously cannot, but at that point, everybody before that, and all the way back to mitochondrial Eve, is forgotten. But I do not believe that they can't influence us despite the fact that they have been forgotten. That's not my belief system. That is this author's belief. So that was already a contentious point for me with this book. Although she's not pushing it. I don't want it to seem like she's trying to shove this dogma down your throat. That is not how this author is at all. This author is presenting her views and her guidance based on her views, and that's totally appropriate. She's never very dogmatic. She's always cautioning you to research, to look into it, to do what feels best. She's very appropriate in that way, and that's why on a scale of 5 stars, I would definitely give her a solid 3. So it's talking about like how to receive messages, knowing yourself, cultural appropriation. It has a very small blurb about cultural appropriation, but maybe 3 paragraphs. And then it goes into a place of power, like a place that you cultivate within yourself via trance or however it is that you get, like kind of like astral travel. So that you can use it as a launching off point to connect with spirits or other realms. And then it goes into this trance that you can have somebody read to you, or you can read to yourself as you're working through this ritual. She goes back to ritual basics. Of course, this is heavily Wiccan. Heavily Wiccan inspired, and my witchcraft is not Wiccan. So that was another thing, was like, I like the exercises, and I like the grounding, and I like the tips, but I'm not one that's called to do ritual in a Wiccan way. So she does talk about smudge, shake, rattle, or jam, like different ways that you can cleanse yourself, creating safer space, releasing sacred space, terms, and different things that she's going to be using in this book. So this whole first section, devotion, by far the largest portion of the book, this is all connecting to very specific deities that she's outlined. So if you don't work with these deities, which I don't work with any of them, it was kind of like interesting to read their stories and like what they like, but not super helpful information because I have no intention of working with these deities. So there's a chapter about working with deities in general, how to get to know a god. She uses GODD to signify a gender neutral version of God, and that's her thing. It's fine. So it talks about a trance where you can get into your place of power, and then you know, set up a meeting with a divine being to try and get to know them, to ask them if they'll work with you, and so on and so forth. And then each of the subsequent chapters are different deities. So Baba Yaga, her history, a brief story that the author wrote about this person, some brief correspondences, and then some kind of ritual or exercise for each of these deities that she covers. So she covers Bridget, she covers Morgan Le Fay, which she considers a goddess. and those are her choices for magic. She does briefly recommend other deities of magic that you could try to connect with, and there is some mention of deities that are not Eurocentric, which is kind of nice, but they're very brief. So like Oshun, you know, I guess Enki's kind of, so Obatala. I mean, it's just, it wasn't for me, but I'm not saying that this book isn't for somebody. So deities of mystery, Dionysus, and it goes through the same format. So the history, the story, the correspondences, and a ritual. Happy from ancient Egypt. Mithras. I am going to also say that some of these stories I found distasteful. So like this, the Mithras stories is a pretty graphic depiction of a sacrifice of a bull. And I have a farm and I eat animals and I process them. And I still felt like it was really like distasteful the way that it was presented. And of course, that's just this author's perception of the story. There's nothing wrong with the story. It's just, it just didn't vibe with me. Deities of revolution. Oh, again, some other gods of mysteries. And here is where we get some like different recommendations. Deities of revolution. So Aradia, Thor, Thor was another one that was kind of shitty, where he like lures this giant out to the sea and then kills him and takes his cauldron. It's just like, geez, that's classy. But I guess since giants are the bad guys, we don't have to treat them with any dignity. I don't know. Lilith was pretty good. I by far like the Lilith story in The Holy Wild by Danielle Dusky better, but this one was not bad. And then I believe that's it. Other gods of revolution: Medusa, Artemis, Rhiannon, Oya, the Morrigan, Kalima. Then we go into honor. So this is the segment that talks about ancestral work, and it's this is it. This is the whole segment on ancestral work. And it was like, it was not a deep dive by any measure, just like a very shallow treading over the top of the waters of this like wonderful practice. So it's basically saying ancestors, just like some very brief, none of the information's terribly bad, but it's just, or incorrect, it's just not very complete. From this book alone, you would not be able to have a rich or meaningful ancestral veneration practice. I certainly believe that this would be a nice place to start. You could certainly start, but a lot of the key concepts and principles and information as far as I understand it, which is again, it's heavily influenced by Afro-Caribbean diaspora and by Asian diaspora, which has been my almost my entirety of experience of ancestral veneration. And those are still the people to this day who have not lost their ancestral veneration practices. They have, especially in Asia, they have, and Africa, they have done ancestral veneration, you know, continuously. It hasn't been lost in those cultures. So that's the caveat. So there's an ancestral ritual. The beloved dead is so that's another thing. She renames the categories of ancestors. So I would think of your blood ancestors as your ancestors that you're related to by blood, or by very close adoption, like your adopted parents, your mother-in-law or your father-in-law if you're very close. Those would be what she calls your beloved dead. What I call my beloved dead are my dead that are not necessarily related to me by blood or affiliation or lineage or place, but I love them. So that's a different, so that would include my dogs, that would include very good friends, that would, so that's my understanding of the word. She does think differently about that. She talks a lot about grief, which I appreciate, but I think that that's just the liminal space of death with your very immediate ancestors, but that's not really the depth and the breadth of your ancestral work. Ancestral elevation, I would caution against jumping straight into elevating a not well ancestor just on the information of this book. It may not be safe for you. But that's just my caution. So the mighty dead is the way that she talks about ancestors of lineage. So ancestors of lineage would be like, I'm a nurse, so all the nurses who came before me. My husband worked in construction for a while, all the construction or the carpenters who came before him, all the witches who came before us, all of whatever lineage we are a part of or identify as, those are your ancestors of lineage. She has renamed the mighty dead. She talks about those that are specifically affected her, and again, they are very Eurocentric, big magical practitioners. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Gerald Gardner, Dion Fortune, Victoria and Cora Anderson, Margot Adler, and then how to connect with the mighty dead. Please don't be limited by that. Many of us have ancestors of lineage that obviously you are not seeing here. So that's something that you can connect with on a one-to-one basis. But that's what she means by mighty dead. And then all of the dead, it's just she's kind of lumping it in. She's got some ancestral exercises, how to call the dead, some ancestral herbs, incense, dirt, and then the forgotten dead. So it's very brief and not particularly satisfying. The last part is the Fae and putting it into practice. So putting it into practice is just a little part, and this is the Fae. And let me just tell you right now, when she talks about working with the Fae, she lumps land spirits of all kinds together with the Fae, which I strongly disagree with. I would consider them ancestors of place, the ancestors whose bones are buried where you live, and also the spirits of the land, and the spirit of your house, and the spirit of your trees, and the spirit of the things around you in your place would be in this, which I don't consider the Fae. So she really briefly goes into the Fae, Laurel's Fae courtesies, what's a Fae realm. She even talks about something about taking a Fae lover and how she advises against it, which I think is a pretty advanced practice for what the information in this book is. Putting it into practice is just like the wheel of the year, and this was a very interesting topic, just how you might do it on a day-to-day basis. So, I'm Brandy. This is Hound Dog Hollow. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This book is What is Remembered Lives. It definitely has a place for an introductory, spiritually curious person, and that's about all I would recommend it to. Thank you.